think it's about time we move on to some topics here.
Okay.
And the first topic we have is our Kickstarter preview for Champions of Hara.
Yeah.
So if you're checking this out on the YouTubes or the Kickstarter page or wherever this might end up, we don't typically look at the camera, but we might do it in this segment here, this topic, specifically because we are an audio podcast that we do film it as well. So it goes on YouTube. So you're not just watching pictures and stuff. You actually get our mugs basically in the shot.
And us drinking water.
Or Monster Energy drinks, which I don't drink these that often, but I obtained a case of them. So now we're temporarily sponsored by Monster, apparently. Anyway, Champions of Hara is a game that's coming to Kickstarter by Greenbrier Games. I will immediately say that this is not a paid preview. This is us doing it because we like Greenbrier Games. They've helped us out. We're helping them out kind of idea. So they sent us a Kickstarter preview copy of Champions of Hara. We tried it out a few times, and this is kind of our thoughts on it. So Champions of Hara is I won't go over the storyline because it's pretty much going to be outlined in everywhere else, and people are going to talk about it. But essentially, it's kind of a semi-cooperative game. For the most part, it's cooperative. There is a PvP versus mode that you can play. In the storyline, it tells you do play that at first to kind of find out who wins the match, and they get to pick one of their 2 scenarios. So every character has 2 scenarios to it, which I believe there's 12 in total, at least at the time of this. This is subject to change based on any of the changes in the rules in the game and things like that. The artwork is completely going to change. I believe it's going to be handled by Steven Gibson, which is a phenomenal artist. I'm fine if he does art for a lot of games at this point. Anyway, what happens is you set the world up. The way the world looks, if you're checking out the pictures online or whatever, you have a main dojo in the middle of the map. Everything is hexagons. So it's a hexagon with hexagons around it. That sits in the middle. Every world is the same size, and it goes around that. So you got a bunch of hexagons in the same world shape, basically. There's a little bit of variety to it because there's like blue and blue have to be kind of across from each other and whatever. So there's a little bit of variance there. Anyway, after you do that, each player gets a character. The characters do play a lot different than each other. They have their own deck of cards, which are upgrade cards and things like that. But they also start with like 3 basic cards which are unique to them, and a movement card that everybody gets. We'll talk about the characters as we talk about the game. Lastly, you pick a scenario basically, and there's a little bit of setup to that, or you're playing a PvP match, whatever you want to do. And the scenario will tell you some obviously victory conditions. In the normal PvP, you have 3 colors of energy that go up to 10, I believe, and you want to get all 3 of those full and then get back to the dojo and you win. In the scenario, it just depends on the scenario. One of the very first ones, I believe, is where you have to kill the bad guy basically that's in that scenario. I can't remember his name right off the bat, but you have to kill him as many times as the number of players. I think he has 16 hit points, and you put these tokens down on him for each player, and every time you drain his hit points down, you lose one of those tokens, and you have to take him that many. My cat's in the background going nuts. So once you get the hit points down from the boss, he dies or whatever. There's also some scenario objectives where in this one, I believe you roll the dice and it'll like put these tokens out on the different worlds. And if a world ever becomes full with either those tokens or cards from the game, that world is destroyed. And if you lose 2 worlds, you lose the game. There's other scenarios, but keep in mind there's 12, I think, at this time. Anyway, the way the game works is on your turn, there's a day and a night phase for each day. Morning and a night, dusk and dawn. During the dusk phase, each world has a center hex that you put a deck of cards on. Those will flip out onto whatever number hex of the day it is. So if it's day 3, it's going to flip out on day 3. Some of these are hidden events. They are face down. You don't know what they do, obviously. They could be an event or they could be a monster. The other ones go face up. They can be an event or a monster. There's also a conflux deck that's off to the side. That is for the night phase. We'll come back to that. Anyway, you flip those cards out, then each player takes a turn. You have an initiative order, which is dictated by a card. It's just round robin, 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you go later, you actually get a special ability that you can use once per day based on that initiative. So you take your turn, you have 3 actions, and during those actions, you can use those cards in your hand. Each card actually has two uses, though. It has a top and a bottom. If it's played from your hand, you use the top part. It goes face up on the table. And then at the end of your turn, they're going to shift. You use this initiative card, and it has kind of like the where these go. It's like a little diagram. So it's underneath the initiative card. Once at the end of your turn, you move those cards to the right of it. And then on your next turn, when you do some of your actions, you can use those cards that are face up on the table and do the bottom parts of them. They'll go above the initiative card, and then at the end of the turn, it goes back to your hand. So you want to use the cards to get out of your hand, but then the more powerful abilities usually are on the bottom of the card, and you use those throughout the next turns. Anyway, you got 3 actions. Those cards will allow you to move around. They'll allow you to do damage. There's no dice for damage. It's mostly like if the monster has 6 hit points, you got to generate 6 points throughout those cards. You have a range, so you can actually hit a couple of spaces away, etc. And then after each player has taken a turn of 3 actions, you will go with the bad guy, who will roll there's a world dice that's actually like 6-sided, and it has the different colors of the worlds, and then a number, and it kind of dictates the space he lands on or whatever. Anyway, you roll the world dial alone, and his different abilities have that icon next to it. And if you roll that icon, then you do that special ability. So sometimes he'll teleport to the champion who's the farthest away, and then he'll immediately do a bunch of damage to him or whatever, or he'll move around. There's, it's just based on what the action is. Each bad guy also has like a special ability, like this guy that for that scenario has a spore ability. I believe he puts spore debuffs on a character, and they take extra damage, or bad guys do extra damage if they have spore counters. And if you have a spore counter, you actually have to spend spirit points in order to attack. Otherwise your damage is lowered, etc. Once that happens, then after the bad guy goes, you do the scenario effect, which or in this case is to roll and see where those tokens go out and what spots they go on. At that point, you just keep playing the game over. The dusk phase. During the dusk phase is when, instead of taking the cards off each world deck and flipping them out, you actually take the conflux deck and you flip out cards that way. And these are like rifts and things like that. Or sometimes they're monsters as well, but the rifts will allow you to gain energy. When you get energy, if you go halfway up a color, so you got blue, green, red, like I said in the PvP rules, if you go all the way to 10 of a color, if you get 10 of all 3 and get back to the dojo, you win. But the reason you also want energy is because when you get it halfway up at 5, you actually get to draw or put one of the cards of that color, because you got 2 of each color, I believe, off to the side, and you have an ultimate ability, which you get anyway on like the 3rd day. So say you get 5 blue energy, you get to pick up your 2 blue cards, and you get to add 1 to your deck. So now you have a little bit more cards to pick from. And that's pretty much the game for the most part without going over all the rules. The last thing is the characters play totally different. I think I was playing Thomas a lot, and Thomas, he's like a steampunk kind of guy. He's like, in a way, like Mega Man. And he will start with these rune points, and he does tons of damage. He's like the glass cannon at range, right? And so he started with rune points, and there's a way to generate them back, but a lot of his abilities say you will do so much damage, but if you spin a rune, you also do this stuff or do extra damage, etc. Which, what was your character's special? I forget.
Which one? I guess
the last one you just played, was it the girl with the big beast?
Yeah, Persephone. She had like the shadow beast behind her and stuff. Her special,
the fear and scare thing.
Yeah. She had the fear meter, which she could, I think, spend to heal, spirit and health and stuff like that, or it even made certain attacks stronger, I think. But you spent it as you used it.
Yeah, so as you took damage, it raised you up and you got more terrified, I think.
Yeah, well, you started out, there was a scared and a terrified, and the keywords, terrified sometimes would do something more.
Yeah.
From what I remember.
And then there was another character that, she has like a heat meter. She just throws around fireballs and stuff like that. And there's like a tree.
Yeah. I think he like ramped up or something.
Yeah. We didn't play. We kind of played the same characters over and over, actually. Right. At least I did, and a couple other people played slightly different characters. But one of our other buddies who played with us played the character that reminded him a lot like a character in League of Legends.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name, but he's like a monkey kind of dude with a staff.
Right.
And he switches to 3 different animal forms but he can't ever stay the same one twice in a row. And it's very much like that. I mean, League of Legends, I think it's like from a mythology kind of standpoint. So it kind of matches that, but that was really fun. Anyway, so I think, what do you think about the game as far as like the player turns?
The player turns, they're interesting. I like the player turn card that you have, and the fact that the cards are double, top and bottom. So you got decisions on if you're, first you got to kind of scan out, see what monsters you want to get, see what their rewards are. Once you kind of dictate what your rewards, if you can kill it to be able to get them, because it's all kind of centralized around trying to get that meter up, because you want to get your next cards to put in your deck.
And the whole time you got to be fending off the bad guy who's running around beating everybody down.
Right. Oh yeah, definitely in the co-op. Because that is I guess the difference between the co-op and playing each other is it's kind of like once you get halfway, you're kind of, okay, I got stuff. Let's go beat on this bad dude now.
Yeah.
But yeah, you pick your new cards, you get your new abilities. It gives you a little bit more in your, arsenal of what to do. So yeah, good time.
Yeah, I really like the idea that you get 3 actions. And the other thing, I mean, I'll probably mention some random rules here and there, but the assist rule, which in the beta of the game is slightly changing, but essentially you can ask somebody to assist you, and you give them one of your actions, so to speak. At first, I think they get a free action, but it makes more sense that they get one of your actions, because sometimes you might be in a position where you can only do 2 actions to do damage, but you want to do another point of damage, and you don't really need to move away. So that third action might be wasted at that point. Not all the time, but at least at that point. And so you might give it to somebody who's close just to throw a ranged attack out there kind of idea.
Right.
But there's quite a bit of especially when you get those extra cards, man. I mean, some of them are catered towards PvP and some of them are catered towards more PvE, like against the scenarios. But for the most part, I mean, those cards, once you start getting your cards, you are totally different than somebody else. I mean, just the way you move around, especially with just your basic ability, like mine's gaining the runes. That's not as like deep as like, say for instance, that other character where he switches animal forms. Right. But I mean, the fact that they play differently is really cool.
No, yeah, the characters all play completely differently.
Yeah.
They all do their own little thing, they're trying to do certain things just to build up whatever it takes to unleash their special abilities and things like that. So every character is totally different. Yeah.
And speaking of the special ability, like I was saying, on day 3, you actually get your ultimate, which is very League of Legends-y, which I like. It's fine with me.
Right.
But your ultimate is like a single-use card. It's a yellow card, obviously, so it's not the normal colors, so you can't get it any other way. There are other ways you can get it, but for the most part, you're getting it on day 3 and using it once. But the ultimate's pretty cool. Like mine was it's like a teleport, but it's like an orbital strike. So you teleport, you can take as many friendly characters with you as you want, but then you teleport basically down onto a space and do that much damage. It's like 1 plus the amount of people you brought with you. So it's like, you're kind of like, all right, everybody come to me. It's like, let's go into this fight, Right. So it's pretty cool. What do you remember what yours did?
I do not remember, actually. Either one. I can't recall either one of them.
Yeah. Well, it's fine. I mean, the ultimates, they are completely different for every character. I actually didn't use it that often, just because, well, obviously you only get to use it once. So, you had to really set that one up for my character. But I mean, 4 damage is pretty a lot. Plus you got everybody in that space, because otherwise they may have to waste a bunch of turns to get over there. The other thing is I like the fact that the game kind of, with the bad guy, I can't remember the actual terminology for it, but it could change anyway. He, like the way that his abilities are determined with the die roll. Right. And so he's kind of doing these, you don't really know what he might do, but you know what he's capable of doing. Right. That's pretty cool. And the fact that all the different bad guys are totally different than each other. And it makes sense because they're specific to scenarios. So unlike games like maybe like Legendary or something, you can't get in this match where you're like, there's no way, it's too hard. But they are balanced, and because who you're fighting against that scenario. We haven't played all the scenarios, but we played enough, to wrap ourselves around it. So let's see, what else do I have that I was missing just in case? Oh, the monsters, which are pretty cool. The monsters have all these special abilities, and not that this is a big, thing that no one else does, but it works well in this game because they might be aggressive. So everything's deterministic combat. You know, you go in, I can do 7 damage. I know I can kill it. The problem is he's aggressive, or he might be dangerous or whatever. So sometimes they'll do damage after you kill them, or they'll do damage if you just move into their space, or they're armored to where you can't do damage at ranged, which was really a problem for my character because everything has ranged on it and not as, I mean, it's got good damage, but everything is ranged. So I have to get right up on him, and I didn't start with as many hit points. So that was a problem. But another thing my character did I thought was interesting. I probably should have played other characters, but whatever. I just kept playing Thomas. He has like one of the cards that allows him to close rifts easier. There's also gloves, I think. Maybe his is the gloves, but there's other cards that do this too. But those rifts, to gain more energy and stuff like that. And those rifts are pretty cool, but the events are pretty neat too because they add a lot of story element to the game. Right. So if you like fluff in games, there's plenty of that in this. I typically don't get super immersed into a story for a theme game because I'm mostly doing reviews and stuff. I'm kind of more focused on the mechanisms and everything. Right. But there is a lot of story. I mean, the events are kind of funny sometimes. Yeah. Actually, a lot of times there's a lot of humor to it. So it's like, blah, blah, blah. They're playing a game of whatever. You're invited to, invite it, quote unquote, right, to help. And you roll a die basically. And the riffs and the events have the same thing where you have to spend spirit to increase your die roll. The difference is with riffs, you can spin it afterwards. And with the events, you have to spin it beforehand. So it's a little bit of a gamble. Right. You roll a D6, but before it's like, challenges is a 5. Well, if I roll a D6, I got a 5 and a 6. So I got a 33% chance. But if I spend 3 spirit, then I only need to roll a 2+ kind of idea. Right. So I think it's pretty fun. I mean, just to be completely fair and biased or unbiased, I will say that it is a lighter game. So if you're looking for something incredibly deep, there's a lot going on. Don't get me wrong, but it is a light game just for the fact of you are, there's not, there's a lot of decisions to make, but it's not really that complex. If that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to explain that, but there's a lot of things going on that's auto generated, so to speak. So like those cards going out and the cards coming out and the cards moving around and stuff like that. So for some people, you need to get everybody involved because there's a lot of things going on in between rounds. But other than that, the game's great. I mean, it's got a cool story. The art, even in the preview copy, was amazing. I would have been, some companies, that's their art, right? Right. No, I wrote that down. When this gets fully published, it's going to look amazing. Are the miniatures coming with it? I know the standees had the miniature on there, but there are miniatures. And the standees do have one side's like the art and the other side's like what the preview of the miniature is going to look like. Some of those miniatures look really fun to paint. Yeah. And I'm pretty excited about that. Yeah. So like I said, I mean, the artwork just on this little prototype looked fine. Yeah. It looked, it was a decent look to it. And it's just going to get revamped. We've seen what they've put out before. Everything usually looks pretty gorgeous. So yeah, it'll look good. Oh yeah. Looking forward to that. And yeah, I mean, that's it. That's Champions of Hara. I think I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I can't imagine this game not having expansions, but hopefully they have ways to add more characters because the characters by far, even though I always like to play the same character a lot and just master that one character. Right. But the fact that you have so many options and they play so differently, it just gets my mind burning on that. Man, I want to design a character. You know what I'm saying? Right. So anyway, any final thoughts? It's a good game. Yep. If you're checking this out on the Kickstarter, definitely give it a try. I don't know if he has print and plays or anything, obviously, but try it out if you can because this game is great.